Hi there, welcome to the channel, welcome back for return viewers. You're watching the Christchurch Review of Books and I'm Kerry. Today I'm welcoming 2025 in with a couple of quick reviews of books I've just recently finished. So without further ado, here's the first one. Colonel Gaddafi's Hat by Alex Crawford. Now, growing up in the 80s, Libya was always seemed to be in the news with its strong man, Colonel Gaddafi, who had been in power since the late 60s and was always espousing all sorts of revolutionary rhetoric in the media, and had some interesting ideas, and basically became a bit of a thorn in the side of the Western powers and came into open conflict with the US and others in the 1980s, and I believe he was supporting people like the IRA terrorists in the UK, so he wasn't exactly making himself very popular in the West, but of course not everyone supports the West, so he had a moderate amount of support, and then he basically started meddling into the affairs of other countries in Africa and the Middle East, and so he lost a lot of support, and by the early 2000s he was trying to curry favour with the West again, and things seemed to be normalising. But then the Arab Spring happened in 2011, where basically populations in a number of Arab and Middle Eastern countries decided to rise up against their corrupt and oppressive rulers, and that went well for some people, but most of the countries fell back into an approximate version of what they already had. In Syria it caused a civil war which has only recently been resolved a few weeks before I filmed this in late 2024, and Libya, the conflict became pretty nasty with the government troops firing on civilians and what have you, and that's where this book comes in. So Alex Crawford, the author, is a journalist for Sky News, the UK news organisation. She seems to make a specialty in putting herself into the dangerous places and reporting the news that others don't seem to reach. Since this, she's gone through a whole lot of other conflicts. I think she's currently in Ukraine with the war against Russia there. So she's obviously not shirking away from the conflict zones. Now, the events in this book kind of some of it is actually quite new to me, because at the time and when much of this was happening, that's early 2011, the major earthquake occurred here in Christchurch, and basically I was seeing surreal imagery of things like Libyan fighter jets defecting to other countries and all sorts of uprisings in Libya. At the same time I was dealing with earthquake aftermath here, so a lot of it didn't actually reach my mind until much later. Yeah, so basically Alex Crawford, she describes herself as someone has actually described what she does as like she's like the lead singer in a band, and she takes a lot of time giving credit to her cameraman and the security detail and all the other people who go around these dangerous areas with her. I won't go too far into it. It's an interesting book. It gives you a snapshot of what these foreign correspondents in war zones actually do, how they feel. There's plenty of blood and gore, there's plenty of detailed descriptions of what happens when a soft human body comes into the way of large military hardware. Let me just leave it at that. And basically, kind of like 2 or 3 rounds of covering the Libyan uprising. She goes to a small town which rose up and has repeatedly come under attack from Libyan government forces, despite the Libyan government denying that they did in there. They get the first footage of that out, which changes the international attitude somewhat, and then she managed to get out of that predicament and back to the Middle East, Gulf states where she's based, and then she basically goes back again a couple of other times during 2011, and she's there when Tripoli, the Libyan capital, falls to the rebels, and she's not actually there, but Gaddafi escapes to another part of the country, and is eventually his convoy is bombed by NATO forces, and he is basically runs away into a drainage tunnel and is caught and is abused by people who catch him, and he ends up being killed or dying or whatever you like to call it. So that's the end of Gaddafi. I think that happened in around August or October or something, 2011. So this uprising was going on basically most of the year. And anyway, it's very visceral. There's a lot of frontline stuff, and there's also a lot of like the camaraderie between the journalists and basically their day-to-day routine, and when they're in these frontline places, how they survive, the supplies they manage to scrounge up. There seems to be a constant need for drivers and people to drive them around, and these locals sometimes put themselves into a bit of a dangerous place by helping the Western journalists, and of course the Western journalists themselves become march men. If they say too much against the government in these countries, they become a target themselves. So I enjoyed this book. It's very eyewitness type stuff. It doesn't give you a big strategic overview of what's going on. That's what I think was kind of like missing in this book for me. I wanted to know why this conflict was happening in this town here and that town there. There's a little bit of an overview of it, but mainly it's the journalists encountering people on the ground, and of course nobody on the ground knows the full picture. So that's it. And Crawford herself is a pretty good writer. She evokes the emotions and the contrast between the war, the conflict and fear, and the really settled home life, and how the tension between those two can cause problems. So that is Colonel Gaddafi's Hat. Title, there's an event where people break into one of Gaddafi's residences, and a young man gets his hat and is very proud of having Colonel Gaddafi's hat. So that's where the title comes from. And interesting book if you're interested in journalism or history. It's interesting, modern history. Libya, I don't think things have gone exactly well for Libya after these events. There's all this hope for freedom and democracy and a new government, but as far as I know, last that I heard, there's like two opposing warlords, both who claim to be the leaders of the Libyan state, and there's like East Libya and West Libya, and they both claim to be Libya. And it's complicated by people in the east go to the west to work, and vice versa, so they can't really split up to be two independent countries because they rely on each other, and it's a bit of a mess. And meanwhile, all sorts of dubious things are flourishing in the country because of this mess. Anyway, that's Libya today. This was Libya in 2011, Colonel Gaddafi's Hat by Alex Crawford. Give it a read if you're interested in that type of thing. Okay, cheers.